All right, so I have Alice. Thank you for joining us. Here's some Europe news that I just got seconds before you joined the call, which is Rob doesn't know this first band, which I forgive him because he's an American. He wouldn't know this, but this is the tweet. Las Ketchup and Lou Bega are among the European stars who will perform at a concert this weekend to show support for troops defending Poland's eastern border. The event is organized by the Polish Defense Ministry and state broadcaster.
Now we are a little peek behind the curtain. We are recording this a bit early because of the holidays in December. So by the time this comes out, this will be an infamous Altamont Hells Angels level event.
Yeah, absolutely. A bunch of like Polish ultras are going to be going in there with bike chains, just swinging,
singing Last Ketchup song.
Okay, who is Last Ketchup?
What is to say about Last Ketchup is that they were. I think they are Spanish. I can't remember if they are or not, but
the best bands you don't know who they are or where they're from. Ridiculously European.
Okay, this happened in the UK as well, right? Ketchup song.
No, what?
Oh my god, what? Am I going? Is this
excuse me?
Okay. I gotta have to. Okay, how do I explain this? So there was a one-hit wonder. I want to say early 2000s. I'm going to have to just Google the Ketchup song, and it was by a band called Last Ketchup, which for those at home it means the ketchup in Spanish. The Ketchup song brackets Acera Hey, which is not real Spanish, was a song that came out. Give me a year. 2002. One hit wonder. Very reminiscent of the Macarena. There was a dance that went with it. It was at a beach. Famously, no Spanish is actually sung in it, other than just like a bunch of gibberish that sounds kind of like Spanish to English people. So that Spanish is, and they've written it out phonetically in Spanish. Acera hey, ha, de, ye, de, yeba, do, de, yebera. I'm activating someone right now.
Yeah, and this is going to be used to psych up the Polish border guards.
Exactly, and Lou Rega's Mambo No. 5, which I think has been a number of lists noted as the worst song ever made. I don't know. All I remember is from the Nathan For You sketch where they try to take down Uber, and all they do is get Uber drivers to play it over and over on repeat. To sabotage Uber from within.
I thought it was pretty cool when I was a kid.
That's it's a banger. I mean, the thing is, right? I've taken so much psychic damage in the first minutes of this podcast from the idea of like Fortress Europe, trying to deport people back to Belarus in like over Mambo No. 5.
Is Lou Bega even from?
He's German, dude.
He's German?
Yeah. What? Excuse me?
Apparently,
I'm learning so much about Europe already, and I hate all of it. So thank you.
We get that a lot, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that is the ultimate example of Europe. Of like, look at this, this kind of Latin influence song that happened from a German man, and this Spanish influence song that happened like only in England and Ireland or whatever. That's the level of diversity that we want, and no more.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my god! Genuinely upsetting to hear all of this.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
I'm looking at you on webcam right now. You don't look very sorry.
I feel it on the inside. I have a disease where I can't express any kind of remorse. They're looking into ways of giving it to the Polish border guard. Hey, it's your weekly corner Späti. It is me, Kieran, and I'm joined by Rob.
That's me.
And we have a special guest with us of Trash Future / Well, There's Your Problem / Kill James Bond fame, Alice Caldwell-Kelly. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing after
considerably worse?
it's going to get better because
we have you right where we want you.
Yeah. It's only here it's going to get better because now we get to talk about the normalization of police violence through the media.
Yeah, just a nice sort of like upbeat subject to talk about on a Friday evening.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us as we get through this, because there's a lot of cop shows in Europe, and I kind of want to have a discussion about like what they mean, why certain countries don't have them, and like the different flavors we get of cop countries, of cop shows, I should say. Because I just want to say up front that like Ireland didn't really have a cop show procedural. In the like mid 2000s, we got really into like shows about crime where there would be like cop characters incidentally on the side, but you weren't necessarily rooting for them. You had like Love Hate, which was like the Irish version of The Wire. But then that was also kind of treated like Scandi dramas. Like they were trying to do their own Scandi dramas. It was the same kind of like blue filter everywhere. Everything.
Yeah. Detective wearing a big like chunky sweater.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very sad. Very upset.
It was a lot of people working at RTE pointing at a Scandinavian person wearing a chunky sweater and were like, "We wear chunky sweaters too. Let's get this going."
It's cold in Scandinavia. Sometimes it's cold in Ireland. But exactly. What more do you need? Britain, by contrast, the United Kingdom, it is like voraciously a consumer of cop dramas. Not only do we produce a vast amount of them, but there came this sort of point, and this informs how I know about some of the European cop shows we're going to talk about, where I want to say like the 2000s to 2010s, it became a thing to like import European cop shows as prestige television.
Yeah.
So you could like see them on BBC 4 or whatever. And go, oh, aren't those foreign cops so interesting?
Well, it plays into this kind of like magical phenomenon that I think happened in UK, Ireland a little bit later, of just like it's in French, so it's classier.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, this is just the French version of The Bill, which was kind of like viewed as pedestrian or whatever. Ireland was a little different. Like, I think the only media difference I would say that occurs between Ireland and the UK is that we were more used to getting European shit, mainly because we didn't have the money to make our own shit. But that faded away in the like, I don't know, late 90s when we just suddenly decided that we had like money, and that lasted forever. Don't look into it. But besides the one that I just named, the Bill, what ones do you remember, Alice? Because I'm trying to remember British cop shows. The Bill,
there's a spectrum, right? The Bill is sort of like relatively mild stuff. It's like a gateway drug. It's like it's what the cops offer you as sort of like to get you into propaganda. So like the Bill, it was quite silly. It was very sort of like low stakes was the main thing too. Like it would be, it was sort of like this slice of life almost, because it was set in like one police station. So you'd follow these like shift of cops around, and the actual crimes that they were like confronting were fucking like shoplifting and shit like that. You'd have to like, you get like a shot of like a guy jumping over a fence, right? That's the level of action we're talking about. And then at some point, the same thing that happened to all long-running TV shows in Britain happened, which is they decided that they needed to make it vastly more exciting. And so the last couple of seasons of The Bill, I think somebody blew up Sun Hill Police Station about like once an episode.
Yeah. So I found like a montage of The Bill. I remember the theme song distinctly, and I remember being...
It is a banger. Yeah.
It is a banger.
You could use that to psych up Polish border guards easily.
Oh, absolutely. Especially...
It's literally called Overkill.
It was called Overkill, which feels a little taunting. But I remember distinctly when I was younger calling it the Shoes Show, because the ending theme was just a close-up of people's shoes. I didn't really know what was happening.
So the bill is like one end, right? And then at the other end, you have your sort of like more grisly, more horrifying, more sort of detective-focused cop shows. Your Silent Witness, your Wire and the Blood, your Luther even. And those tend to be a bit more like prestige, I guess.
Yeah. So like there's like a distinction between, I think, maybe cop show and like detective show.
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I feel like the I don't know, I even had this discussion in like anarchist circles who are like all ACAB, but then they're just like, I can kind of see the function of detective, or like detectives do what I think everyone kind of just assumes cops do. Which, like, if you have
it's like a useful, like, investigative function, sure.
Yeah, something bad happened and we can figure out what it was.
Yeah. I think it's like, but we're not gonna, like, get into the fucking cop thing on my part again, but I think one of the things about the police is that even if you are fully in favor of abolishing them, you still have to recognize that there are some useful societal functions, like, buried in there. Like, if you're going to have people driving around in cars, you probably need somebody to make sure they're driving around safely. If you probably need some kind of, like, investigator at some point.
I think the argument that I'm most sympathetic to is that, like, there's actually a lot of useful functions buried into the police. It's just they've been given to one guy rather than, and overlaps too much. Like, there probably needs to be someone who deals with, like, domestic problems, but not the same person who also isn't the only person who's allowed to shoot people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so there's something I want to ask you about, and this is going to get into like deep British television lore.
Ooh, good. Okay.
Which is, I feel around the same time the bill got very explodey was when there was a massive explosion on the British sitcom Brookside.
Yeah, you're totally right. You know what it is? It's the exact same thing, because the bill at its heart was a soap, right?
Yes.
Like the cop thing was kind of like incidental to it. And the same thing happened to like other long-running soaps, Coronation Street, EastEnders. Those got kind of like owned in the ratings for a while by Brookside because it was edgy and it was like controversial and it was down to earth instead of just watching the same three people have endless cups of tea forever. And the way that they corrected that was to like fucking add explosions. And so Coronation Street, I think, had like a tram drive through a pub and kill a bunch of people.
All right, the Brookside one was a gas leak.
Emmerdale had a plane crash, because what else are you going to do in like extremely rural settings except drop a plane on people?
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I feel like Brookside got there first with the with a gas leak being like, that's probably the most realistic reason a quiet, sleepy town would have an explosion.
Sure.
Everything else is farcical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bill tried to catch up with that too, and so you had this sort of like, I don't mean to sort of get nostalgic here, and I don't think like Dixon of Dock Green is like a useful comparison, but I distinctly remember the bill at the start of my childhood being mostly about sort of like fat cops wearing like uniform jumpers and like tackling a guy for shoplifting in Asda, and the bill at the end of my childhood, which was like armed police, like bombings, shit like that. And it's like, I'm not sure what happened other than like increasing militarization.
So do you want to hear my recollection of? Okay, so I watched the last scene ever of the bill, which was 2010, and the first line they say while interrogating someone who, I'm assuming for like story structure reasons, is guilty because it's too late in the episode.
Sure.
The sergeant basically goes, "There's CCTV everywhere now. We've got you," which feels very New Labour kind of era.
Yeah. We've sort of automated ourselves. We've automated ourselves out of a job. Do you want to know my favorite storyline from the bill? This is like hazily remembered through childhood, right? But like I distinctly remember this. There was a storyline about one of the detectives. He caught being a pedophile. He caught a bad case of pedophilia because he like went to work in the sex crimes unit, and it like transmitted to him.
Oh no, you hate it. Happens to the best boys in the service.
The scientists were predicting that after Corona, you know.
But that was genuinely how they framed it, right? It was like he was. It was like radiation or something. It was an occupational hazard that he was exposed to, and it made him a nonce. And I'm still stunned by that to this day.
Oh, absolutely, because like I'm sure. So this is also the thing that happens with soaps, and obviously happened to the Bill, is because it's just this incredibly long form thing where pretty much people who act on it basically have like careers set for life. It's like when writers in early Ireland would go work in the civil service, because it was just like you were there for life. But then through the time, all these characters just have to become monsters because like interesting things have to happen to them. So like this storyline happens, but presumably before that there was like maybe 5, possibly 10 years of this guy just being like framed as good.
Absolutely. But the really crazy thing was he was still framed that way in the storyline. It was like this was something that had like happened to him, and it was like something that he would have to like struggle to get help for. And I do think that it was very considerate of the Bill to put a list of everyone who was involved in writing that storyline at the end of the episode for the real police.
You telling me there was possibly people in British media who might have... No.
So what was the like social, maybe like, so who watched the Bill? What are we talking with this? You mentioned the cop. What's the, because fill me in. I've never seen this thing. Is it like a household staple? Is it lean more to the, are people like, that's the way cops should be, or anything like that?
Yeah, honestly, I would say the biggest vibe from the Bill was like ordinariness. Like it was sort of mundane, and like I don't think there was anything particularly remarkable about the people who watched it. Like as I remember it was the reruns of it were like the first thing on after children's television ended in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So like if I watched, I don't know, Blue Peter or something, and then like I didn't want to do my homework, then I could just watch the Bill instead.
That is 100% what I was doing. It was very like it was kind of like soap opera in the sense of like it was the same kind of people watching it, which was people who were capable of watching the TV at like 5-6 o'clock in the evening, which is predominantly like it was my granny who would watch it. It was like maybe my mom is just something that was on the television when really she was like cooking or making sure I wasn't wrecking the place or something. Like a lot of people half watching it, I imagine.
Yeah, and it was like one of sort of two choices that you had, because you could either do the Bill or you could do like Holby City or Casualty. You could either have your sort of like your medical soap or you could have your police soap.
And I feel like the medical soap was possibly too much blood to have in front of the young ones.
Yeah. Because every episode of Casualty started with somebody like falling off a ladder or whatever and like breaking their leg open or something.
Yeah. Because again, that was also quite mundane as well, which is also in another way more terrifying. It's just like, hey, you have a ladder, you can jump.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the difference in vibe for the Bill versus like the UK is, I think American propaganda really tries to portray cops as like super competent, whereas I feel like propaganda in the UK was maybe more like they are deserving of sympathy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, I think the vibe they were going for was largely like everyman, and they're put upon. They're not like sort of persecuted in the way that, say, American cops like to think of themselves, but they are like they have to deal with a lot of shit. But it's like, again, it's really low stake shit. Like a kid might be rude to you, and you have to like go, hey, stop that.
But I do think broadly that is the kind of, that's the line if we're talking propaganda in Europe. It's like they're just like you know. Versus in the U.S., whether it's I don't know for whatever differences, it's you can't really hide their, semi like colonial police kind of thing of these just like people coming in from the suburbs to like drive around your cities and maybe kill someone.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it if there was an American show that like took that same sort of line as the bill, and the only thing I'm thinking of is like a really deep cut, and it's Hill Street Blues.
Never
is
watched that.
It's old. It's 80s. But the only reason I know about it is that sort of spun off into things like NYPD Blue and stuff because my mum was really into NYPD Blue. But that was more in the sort of like detective mold.
Yeah. So that was like I think the aim is quite similar though, because like I mean aim is a big word here, but like I guess the functional result is like American cop shows want you to like give up your seat or whatever. Like it's kind of like you have to honor the police, whereas I feel like European cop shows are like, don't be mean to them. They've had a long day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which I think leads us. Actually, let's talk about this French cop show that was on BBC4. Do you have much to say about it? Because I'd never seen this before.
I have a lot to say about. You're talking about Engrenage or Spiral. Yeah, so the thing about Spiral is, I watched it as this like prestige product subtitled on BBC4, and it was absolutely as like you say, it was sort of this like it's fancier, it's darker than British cop shows. And after watching a couple of seasons of this, you realize that it is in fact just as silly. It's just in French. And it has all of the same like reactionary sort of bugbears. It has all of the same sort of like headline chasing impulses. So like the thing about Spiral is that it started out as being this sort of like total follow like Law and Order sort of following of the criminal justice system in France. So you have the judicial police, the judge who's investigating it, and then the lawyers. And then all of those sort of got more and more like hived off and intensified into separate things until eventually you were doing this sort of like legal thriller on one end, and then on the other end you were doing this cop show that was basically just what's the current moral panic in France right now.
They won't let me be racism.
They literally did an entire season about, hey, have you heard about how kids in the banlieues are like doing crimes now? It's bad, right? And then, it's genuinely, it was following like a girl gang. And this was handled with a level of sensitivity that you would absolutely expect from a French cop show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, yes, welcome to France. We do not see color, which gives us the excuse to be racist AF.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I looked at this as well. I've forgotten how to pronounce it. The Spiral. I'm going to learn French again because 2022 is going to be a year of the France. But I did look at this, and it's like, I think I looked at the first trailer for the season 1, and it's a little bit darker, a little bit edgy, like you said, but also it seems to have continued on even after the like co-production with BBC, and just like continued on Canal Plus or whatever, and it's like it just looks like everything else on Canal Plus or whatever. It's got like the exact same production values or whatever.
And by the time they got to season 4, which I think was the last one, they did the thing that all cop shows do when they run out of ideas, which is there's a guy with a bomb in the police station. That was their like big trump card, was they blow up the police station at the end.
You love to see it. It's classic French vibes, though. I do love it. It's a lot of like hot French guys, which is to say ugly guys in good suits.
It's got some classic ugly guys. Also the world's most exhausted looking woman.
She just has so many hot guys to choose from. It's tiring.
Yeah, she's the captain of this squad of detectives, and all of them out doing various terrible like personal grief things that like they're drinking too much or they're having affairs, and she's just kind of like basically not, but getting more and more exasperated every episode until by the last season she looks not good.
Yeah, so she's police mom. Basically,
essentially, yes.
Yeah, because that's I think that's a classic thing of just like whenever a show like this wants to show like, oh, we're progressive, a woman is like the top ranking person in the department, and it's always just like, yeah, but she's basically someone in the writers' room's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
we're all misbehaving, and then she scolds us and looks kind of tired.
Yeah,
brilliant. So now I want to get into the more Germanic,
Teutonic, yes.
But not too much because this is an Italian co-production. One that you told me about, Alice, literally last night.
Yes,
and I became obsessed.
This is something that I've been obsessed with since the time when. Well, we talked about this. Watching TV in a hotel is one of the most alienating experiences you can have. And so at one point in my life, I found myself in a hotel in Moscow, a space-themed hotel in Moscow, just to make it even weirder, with nothing to do for the evening. And so I decided to watch some TV. And like my Russian was better then, but still basically non-existent. And what I found was a Russian dub of an Italian-Austrian co-production called Commissar Rex.
Yes.
I thought I was having a fucking psychotic episode. I thought I had imagined this until I looked it up afterwards.
It is... So not only did that happen, but also I find out about it from the first time last night when you tell me about it. I look into it, and turns out it's like one of the most popular TV shows ever. I feel like I'm being gaslit by reality, being like, "Oh yeah, Commissar Rex. Did you not watch that?
Yeah, did you not watch the show where the detective's partner is a German Shepherd, and
it can't fail with that kind of formula?
Yeah, and it helps him investigate crimes by doing like tricks."
I feel like I'm going to like go back and watch like old television or one of those like follow-up shows that they did for like Behind the Throne after Game of Thrones came on. It was like, yeah, this episode really reminded me of a classic episode of Commissar Rex, and like everyone has been talking about it. It's always been there in the background. I'm going to go home to my wife and she's be like, yeah, me and my family used to watch that all the time.
Yeah, there's a giant Commissar Rex poster hanging up that you don't remember buying.
It's like the Berenstein effect. I've slipped into a new reality.
So my impression of the show, this is just from watching the theme song, the intro music, which looks like a dog food commercial. And the link that you sent me, Kieran, not only the dog food commercial vibes and the way they're just like freeze frame on a guy and it's like Gunther. And
Herbert Nuff.
And the fact it repeats 8 times was like, this is the actual Too Many Cooks, like in the real life version.
Yeah, and all of these guys are so Austrian is the other thing. So it will be Gunther, and then the next shot is a separate other Gunther.
It's your classic European cop shows of like you have the one younger guy. Like literally the opening theme is like dog breaks through glass, comes alongside, clearly not in the same shot, a guy who shoots, and he's the young Austrian who's like still fit, and then he's being guided and mentored by a collection of just the roundest Austrian men you've ever seen. Literally like fucking Uta from fucking Simpsons doing forensics on this show. But the thing that I found about this is that yes, you found the dub of it in Russian while on a lovely holiday, I'm assuming, and then I found, like, going through the Wikipedia article that, it's been basically dubbed into every language. It was on Australian television as well, dubbed into English. Like, it was over there.
This really is just this, like, worldwide phenomenon that, like, all of us have missed.
And there was also 6 remakes. So the theme song I sent you last night was not the original Austrian-Italian co-production theme song, but it was the Russian theme song to the Russian remake of Commissar Rex, which I literally think was called like Rex's Return or something, which I think was like an unofficial sequel. Like it was always in Russia. It was always Russian. There was a Polish version. There was a Portuguese, Lithuanian, Slovak, and also a Canadian version, which I saw the poster for it and seems far too recent for this to have gotten away with.
I'm reading the Wikipedia entry for Commissar Rex here, and I have a delightful little sort of amuse-bouche for you, which is because what happened is they did a few seasons of this in Austria, and then they moved it to Italy. Okay, so I'm just gonna read this.
That's when it became really Il Commissario Rex.
Yes, yeah. Katja Martelli is a forensics officer in Rome. She is seen as a romantic interest for Rex's handler, Fabri, but Rex is opposed to this. At one point, when Fabri is injured and at home researching a murder related to role-playing games on his computer, he asks for a gaming police officer to be sent to his house to brief him. Martelli takes this opportunity to enter his house and seduce him, and creates an RPG profile for him so he can befriend the suspect online, but the figure she chooses for him is a model of Fabri wearing only a towel. What a great show.
What a wonderful show. The other thing that I'm just reminded of is there's like a late show, a late season joke in 30 Rock where like they basically make the show Precious, or the movie Precious, but then are like forced to put a talking dog into it. And I feel like what the show is.
I'm still stuck on the gaming police officer.
Oh yeah, that exists in Italy.
I'm happy they don't just rely on the dog though. They build a lot of backstories for the.
It's a real ensemble cast between
90% dog driven.
The theme song is very. I described it as very anime because the lyrics are in English, but under the pretense you don't understand that. So the lyrics are very little. I think one of the lyrics was literally like, "This is what happens when a dog gets involved." We're like, yeah, I guess that's what the show is. Also, I looked into it. The Slovak remake is very. It happened mid-2000s, and it's very like. Kind of how I imagine Spiral was pitched to the British audience. It's very like darker and stuff. There's just a dog there.
Incredible.
The trailer for the last season showed the dog dead. I'm assuming that was a fake out.
No, they killed Rex.
They killed Rex. I think he was called Max in Slovakia, but still. Oh God, that was wonderful. But now we get to talk about. And probably one of the last things we get to talk about is the German cop shows.
Okay. This is the only one I've ever actually seen.
Yeah.
So I mean, this, again, I feel like I can share a little bit. We're doing Tatort first, the Tatort.
Yeah, I mean, do you have much to say about Polizeiruf?
I don't know.
Apparently there's an East German Tatort that is still going because people preferred it.
That sounds incredible. No, I have no notes on this one. I just think that's good. I think it sounds good.
They really go hand in hand. So like,
the only thing I had noted about it was like one of the older characters looks like Robert De Niro, like exactly like him. He's East German.
Yeah. Who needs Western media? You have Robert De Niro at home. Yeah. As my understanding is that Tatort's from 1970, I want to say, early 70s, and Polizeiruf came out at the same time, slightly after.
Yeah.
But they had started planning it first, and in West Germany, in the Bundesrepublik, they were like, it honestly seems like a space race or something. They're like, no, we have to get our realistic crime police serial out first.
Am I right in thinking that the deal with Tatort, the thing that makes it unique, is that like basically every region or city of Germany has its own series of Tatort?
Yeah. Which is part of the reason Polizeiruf kept going, because it's like, well, that's that.
That'll just be East
version.
German Tatort.
Yeah, there is a Dresden Tatort and obviously Berlin. So there's a little bit of encroachment there, but in general, it's super regional. It's a big thing where they like, I think they often, not always, but they often get actors from the city to play and speaking regional dialects, and like there's a lot of local color.
Things when you go south enough, things get very like Alp based, like some skiing accident.
This guy's been hit by a hornnoose that's come over the border from Switzerland.
There's a lot of scenes of like, here they are at their favorite food stand that they always go to, eating the local, giant bread or whatever it might be.
I like regional German cuisine is just various combinations of sausage, bread, and how you
various kinds of like raw fish if you're north enough.
Oh, that's some Hamburg Tatort shit. Yeah.
So, and there's probably some kind of political or social meaning there because, I mean, to like unify Germany or something, I don't know. Because even when it's divided, they have their own versions. And jumping forward a little bit, but there was a very special episode of Tatort called Unter Brüdern, so like among brothers, about the reunification of the two Tatorts, of Polizeiruf 110.
It was a crossover.
And Tatort, yeah.
There was like an MCU crossover.
There was like the Stasi was like doing some bad stuff, and they did a crossover between, I forget if it was East Berlin or what group, and then they came to West Germany and it was this whole collaboration.
Yeah,
and
the bad guys are still like the East German apparatus.
Exactly.
It's not like, the CIA stay behind mission was also doing that stuff.
The story was that like they were losing power and they were like doing weird illegal stuff because they were getting desperate. Like it was supposed to come out on like the day of reunification. I think it came out 3 weeks after.
What
so
the fuck?
Late October 1990.
That may be the most German way of like celebrating the reunification of your country is to sit down and watch a crossover episode of a cop show.
Yeah. But like this cop show, Polizeiruf 100, saying like that seems to be the only thing East Germany gets to keep though. Like after unification, that's it. You get this one cop show.
No, it was sold to a Swabian businessman, an entrepreneur. But Tatort, I don't know the numbers for Polizeiruf, but Tatort was huge in the 70s. I guess there were like 2 channels back then, but still, we're talking 20 plus million viewers, up to 75% of households watching. Part of the reason was that it was like a ritual where you had the nightly news or at 8 p.m. on Sundays, and right at 8:15 you start Tatort, and then you get to watch whatever the latest capers are going on in Germany. And part of the system was that, so they're all an hour. They used to be up to 2 hours, I think. Now they're all standardized hour and a half. And so it takes, and it's supposed to be like high production value. Alice, you mentioned the exports before. The very first Til Schweiger, who is some might know as a pretty well-known German actor, he did Tatort like after he was kind of famous, and it was this big like, can you believe Tatort's getting Til Schweiger? And so his first episode, like the ratings jumped up, and it was called Welcome to Hamburg in German because he was the Hamburg cop, and that was released as a standalone film called Nick's Law in the UK. To be like, here's what's going on in Hamburg. He was taking, I don't know, some clan. I'm doing air quotes.
The kind of very racially coded word of gang.
Just enjoying some distinctive Hamburg activities.
I caught a fish and I put it directly between those 2 pieces of bread.
Til Schweiger looking into the camera and biting the head off of an entire herring.
I'm one of you.
He does have a look. I could really picture him doing his look. For those who don't know him, he's like in every German movie for some reason. He was Hugo Stiglitz in Inglourious Bastards, the one who they break out of jail because he's so good at killing Nazis. It's the German.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I've discovered about Tatort is that the Germans, having not satisfied with having centralized their cop shows, then attempted to centralize and rationalize everybody else's. Because in the late 80s to early 90s, they tried to do a project called Eurocops.
Yes.
Oh.
Where the deal was they were just going to sort of do Europe-wide Tatort. And so you would get like Tatort Rome or Tatort London or whatever else. And it would just be this sort of grand program of cultural interchange and ever closer union on a police drama basis.
Yeah, but don't forget, cops. You can be friends with a Croatian, whatever, but cops. Remember.
Yeah, you can be friends with the only real people in Croatia, the police. I mean, it feels like a synecdoche for the EU as a whole. Really, it's like ever closer union between all of these police officers.
Exactly, and I don't want to so in the 70s again, we're talking rock star viewership numbers. It is still, even if it's not viewed as often today, it's still like 8-9 million viewers, and higher for some of the more popular ones. Til Schweiger was getting like 12 million.
What's the sort of reputational status? That if someone says to you, "I can't tonight because I'm watching Tatort," like what vibe does that give off to you?
Understandable. I mean, that's like real nerd shit, but it happens. So, just a few little anecdotes. I have a friend who named her pets after different Tatort detectives. People get together on Sundays and watch it together. It's like a big thing to go watch on Sunday nights. You can go watch Tatort with people. And yeah, a lot of old people will be like, well, I just watched the news, so of course you're gonna watch Tatort. That's what you do.
I'm already sitting down.
Yeah, I'm not moving. Yeah. But it's definitely, even if people don't watch it regularly, it is, I would say, more of a cultural institution than even something like Law and Order in the US. Maybe similar style, but it is more of a phenomenon. Even the big episodes, or some dramatic, it was a really risque episode this week or something.
But it's also to go back to comparing to Bill or the police procedurals in the States. It doesn't have this kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, it doesn't have this low culture kind of vibe about it.
Okay, it's interesting you say that, because it's my impression is it's a weird mix. Yeah, it's not as soapy because some serious, but then it's also goofy in some ways.
You're not looked down upon by watching it as being basic or something.
No, I don't think so. No, it's very much a part of German culture. Yeah. Honestly, well, okay, I don't want to jump ahead. So one of the interesting things that I thought is probably the most beloved detective character is this guy Szymanski, and his whole thing was
Szymanski's a good cop name to be yelling
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so his whole thing was that, I mean, it's like a standard trope, like the cowboy cop who does whatever he wants, but his whole thing was he was greasy and lived in a working class neighborhood, and his first scene on camera is him waking up, and he doesn't have any dishes, so he cracks 2 eggs in a glass and drinks it instead of cooking the eggs.
Yeah.
And he's beloved. He died recently, and I'd have added this video to the Euro vibes. There's people doing pouring beers out for him in the street in Duisburg, and it was all yeah, he's the cool guy because he's not, he's one of us.
Yeah,
that's interesting for a lot of reasons. Partly because I don't know how much of this is true or exaggerated after the fact, but people were this ruffian is disgracing the art of detective work. There were old Germans who apparently said that back in the day. If you read it today, I've seen this in multiple publications where they're the Szymanski character, because he was a working class cop, his big thing was he said scheisse all the time, he swore, he didn't give a fuck. If you look under his YouTube videos now, you'll see comments oh, he wouldn't have gendered like these crazy people today, doing the proper gender neutral.
You know what's really funny is that we didn't have this so much as we had to invent it retroactively. When we started getting boomers getting nostalgic for the kind of cop who would would punch you in the face and then go home and eat a big thing of pasta out of a can or gravy. Yeah, we had to invent that because we did a time-traveling police procedural where a modern woke cop is sent back to the 70s. It was called Life on Mars, and there was this sort of brief vogue for Philip Glenister's character DCI Gene Hunt, who was this very similar sort of figure of this sort of rain-coated alcoholic bigoted cop. In a sort of you can't say that these days sort of way.
That was big show too. That was some the most watched thing. Was that ITV? Channel 4.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they made Life on Mars, and then they did a sequel, Ashes to Ashes, in the 80s. So this ran for a few years. Also, I've discovered that in Duisburg there is a Horst Szymanski Gasse.
Yep. Yeah. They named it after him. After
right.
being cool on TV. No, but what's so I've seen this in multiple like reviews and stuff where they say he brought the 68 generation like onto TV, which I don't. Why? Like, how does he represent that? But
listen, it's like they say, if you're not a revolutionary communist before you're 30, then you have no heart. But if you're not a revolutionary communist turned police detective after you're 30,
but yeah, like it is so patronizing of just like, the 68 generation, they're rebelling, the whole world's kind of falling apart, they want communism. How do we get back to them? It's like, what if there was a cop who looked like shit? They'll love that.
What if there was a cop who didn't own any plates?
He's like buff and has a thick mustache. So,
but it is very kind of like talking down to the millennials. Like, millennials don't have plates.
But by the same token,
they want to rent plates.
By the same token, these are the people fucking writing this were whatever student Maoists who now write for the culture section of Der Spiegel, and they're like, yeah, we felt so represented. Like, finally, there's someone swearing on TV instead of being like a fucking descendant of the Hohenzollern dynasty. Like, they're just real Germans like us.
I love that episode of Tatort where they deal with a great leap forward.
But it is like, I don't know what to make of it, because the mind-numbing like 60s culture war is mind-numbing everywhere. But something in Germany is there is a whole group of people who are like, yeah, we just wanted to say shit on TV. That's all we were really fighting for back then.
Well, I feel like everyone
this is as good a reason to become a Maoist as any, I think.
Yeah. I feel like everyone in Germany who wanted to do something a bit more substantial than that died.
Was mysteriously suicided at the exact same time.
So, but yeah, part of the reason I bring all that up is because it seems to me like Tatort, I don't know, maybe others would disagree, but like it's been, let's say that some have criticized Tatort for being too woke now. Like, dude, had this big thing about how like, oh, they paid money because there was something in Hamburg set at like a autonomous left. Like, they had to use an autonomous squat for some plot line, and so they paid them like 3,000 euros or whatever. And so then Bild, the right-wing tabloid here, is like, your Gates Ed money is being sent to left extremists.
Is funding anarchists.
And it's like, oh, they're all women, and now there's like non-white German commissars and whatever. And like a lot of the plot lines are like ripped from the headlines about like right-wing extremism. It's not all of that, but I think it's interesting that is almost like the image, because if you can trace something from like the 70s where they had multiple like 68 figures like have guest appearances.
Yeah.
Like this guy Rio Reiser, Reinier Langhans, who was famous for living in this commune in Berlin. Like, they're like, yeah, you go on the police procedural, like, because it's part of German culture.
Well, it does kind of seem like almost the German equivalent of something like the Graham Norton show, where like the celebrities just kind of show up on the show.
I wrote down some guest appearances. Roger Moore, James Bond as himself.
You don't arrest me. I'm just a little birthday boy.
Ich bin ein Geburtstag.
Ich bin ein Geburtstag, Junge.
In a very highly publicized episode, because it was in the Til Schweiger Hamburg series, Helene Fischer.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just last year, Armin Laschet, which LOL.
What?
Yeah, he was on
Laschet was on it.
As a cop? Like, was he like sliding over the hood of like a BMW?
Rolling slowly, like... God damn it. They should get his son to go on it. Joe would be good on it. Joe Laschet.
So, I don't know what to make of all that. What role Tatort has, because it seems like not as much of the like, well, yeah, whatever, like Dirty Harry, like cops are just trying to protect you from this like disgusting society. And it's more like, hey, we're all in this together and we're building.
Yeah, I feel often when I listen to Corner Späti that you guys, whenever you're talking about some feature of particularly German culture or German politics, and you correctly identify all of the reasons why it's terrible, I just go, man, I'd kill to have something that terrible. If it was only that bad here. Like, Tatort to me, like, obviously it's not good politically, right? But it seems to me like the sign of a much healthier society than the kind that produces, I don't know, Silent Witness or fucking The Bodyguard or Line of Duty.
It's yeah, it's so interesting because like it's the thing that I think is different about Tatort versus like anything else we've talked about before, or like cop procedurals in the United States, is that it's become like a communal TV event that it also has to almost be for everyone. Whereas I feel like all these other shows that we talked about, or anything that happens in the States, have found their niche and have really dug into them.
Yeah, and I mean that's sort of why it's I would say effective propaganda, is because it speaks to something that is potentially quite a sellable idea, is where American cop shows are like, cops are different from you, they are like this elect class of like kinetic tactical operators. If you're doing this thing where like, cop shows are for everyone, they relate to you and your local culture, because the cops are the people, and like policing happens by consent, right? Yeah. That's a tremendously seductive idea. I think it's a nice idea. It would be nice if it were true.
Well, that's also like the regionalism, like you're right, like plays a big part of this, because that also reinforces the idea of them being a part of the community. Rather than trying to force everyone in this country to watch a show that's happening in the like hedonistic den that is Berlin or something, as the rest of the country views it.
Oh, but then of course Berlin has their own version. So the current two,
everyone's happy.
The current
everyone's
two commissioners, the two detectives for the current Berlin, because they change after, I don't know, 5, 6, whatever years.
Yeah.
I do want to, before I forget, Szymanski he was the one who did the big crossover reunification episode, because of course, you gotta have the stars. So the two, I haven't seen a full episode. I was just like jumping around on YouTube last night of the Berlin show. But as far as I can understand and reading reviews, is that the guy is bisexual, so that's part of his character, and the woman is Jewish and is often yelled at by non-white Germans for being Jewish in Berlin, and that she loves to go clubbing and like just get fucked in mankind bathroom or whatever. It's like in your local color.
Well, yeah, that's the kind of just like, that's your level of ideology there, of just like, yeah, you can be bi, just do like heinous shit and kick out or whatever, but if you fucking talk about Palestine for 5 goddamn seconds. Yeah, because like, God, I just find it very funny that it's complained about for being too woke, and then it's like, oh, it's too woke because it's dealing with right-wing extremism, and it's like, at the same time you acknowledge it's like it's chasing the headlines. It's like, well, I feel like you've
putting the cart before the horse there. I mean, one of the but like genuinely, the fact that it speaks to any kind of community at all, however narrow that vision of it might be, is so such an improvement. Because like even the bill, right? Because that came out in the 80s. Like that was basically a Thatcherite project.
It was 83, 100%.
Yeah. So like the bill sort of, even that didn't relate to any sort of community at all. Like the cops might have been people just like you, but they weren't part of anything other than the police.
There's also like a weird aspect of how kind of detached from reality it was. So like there's in the bill, there's like, I put a super montage in the notes of just like every time an explodey thing happened, but like it ended with a baby exploding, which was very hard for me to look at.
But, like, I hate when this happens.
Yeah. It's a real problem when you're a new father, Once you get past the age of 3, though, you don't have to worry about it. But the thing that like gets me is that in its mundanity as well, it also kind of like makes you incredibly atomized and like paranoid. Because a lot of the violence that I saw in that super montage was like, even though it's before like, the Blair years or the coalition years, it's very like kids in hoodies. Don't trust kids in hoodies.
Yeah.
And the other way that it's detached from reality is I found out they never really did the IRA, even though that would have been like the perfect time for it.
No, never. They never did the IRA. They vaguely nodded towards like the war in Iraq, I believe, because like at the very end, one of the cops was like this ex-military guy who had like PTSD, and that was like their big sort of ripped from the headlines thing.
Sure, yeah. But then Sherlock did it as well, I guess.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I have just two more things on Tatort, if you'll indulge me. With the plot lines, one recurring, like one of a go-to, it's serious in the sense that it's often very like intense things, like whatever, child abuse and ritual, like, I don't know, weird stuff. One of the go-tos, though, is someone is having sex with like a 16-year-old girl, and then like that's a well that's been returned to many times. One of the most like famous episodes is from the 70s with Natasha Kinski playing. I think she was 15 at the time, but playing a 17-year-old.
Oh,
who was like helping the detective catch this man.
I interpreted that very differently. I thought that what you meant is, it starts with someone having sex with a 16-year-old, and then the like cop BMW drives through the wall of the bedroom, and the guy gets arrested.
No, the German attitude towards pedophilia is different from the UK and bad. Like you know about the whole thing of just like German authorities we don't need to talk about it, but yeah.
Well, I bring up Natasha Kinski because at the moment this is happening, she's talked about how her father, the famous actor Klaus Kinski, was perhaps molested her or inappropriate while she was a child, and at the same time details have been obscured over the ages, but either was dating or almost dated Roman Polanski in the 70s. And then they're like, let's make a show about it, which is always like, I mean, because Tatort has such a cultural footprint and like, you know, it is such a mouthpiece, like you will reach millions. Back then 75% of households in Germany. Like, I don't know, there has to be some powerful decision makers in the process. I've always thought that. Which brings me to my second point, which probably means nothing.
Okay.
But I would be letting down our listeners if I didn't bring this up.
Okay, what is this?
Which revolves around...
Rob only gets like this when something very third eye is going to happen.
Alice, so you were the NSU, the National Socialist Underground murders in Germany?
Yes. Yeah.
So those happened over the course of several years in the 2000s. They were, underground. They have all these like weird connections to police or perhaps intelligence that were just not talked about or not discussed. So in a November 2001 episode of Tatort, it's just like normal stuff. They're going, it's just the scene is going on, and then they're like, here are those suspect files you asked for, and they put it down on the table, and there's just shot, and the photo on the file is Uwe Mundlos, the NSU, one of the 3 NSU murderers, in 2001.
Before
it is his actual photo. Now, you may be wondering, how could something like this happen?
I am wondering how something like this could happen.
First of all,
I'm going to pause for 5 minutes for people listening at home to make guesses. Say it out loud if you're on a bus.
According to Der Spiegel, first of all, blamed it on the intern. Classic move.
This intern with foreknowledge of like an underground Nazi murder cell. Yeah.
So it's a real photo from 1998 because the 3 of them were wanted by Thüringen or some East German police for building a bomb. And so that was in 1998, and they had gone underground at that point. So like it just been out, no following up. Like they're like, okay, those photos, their photos were out there. But it was just a drop in a bucket of like, right-wing people building bombs.
I feel like you still shouldn't use real criminals.
Well, that's the thing. They're like, we don't usually use real criminals, but I guess it got in the pile somehow. And then like that's literally all they said. Like the interns make the props, and I don't know, it just got in there somehow because sometimes they have real files, but usually they don't. By November 2001, 4 murders had already been done by the NSU.
Right.
And no one publicly was making these kinds of connections.
So some intern was just like trying to like hint to some service.
Like the only reason I bring that up is because Tatort must have such a high level. Decision makers at the show must have some connection to law enforcement, just this fucking state apparatus, because it is so,
to use uniforms, to use equipment and stuff like that. It have to be, there's got to be some sort of connection, even if somewhat innocent. That is weird.
I've been thinking about that for all day.
How could you not?
Yeah. What a horrifying note to end on.
I know, but I just like the idea of you're watching the show. It's like, it can't be as bad as Rob says, and it just holds in the photo for like 20 seconds. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good overview of cop shows. I think we've come to some decent conclusions about this. There are millions more.
We didn't even touch on the whole genre of like Scandi crime shows.
Exactly, yeah, which is like kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're different, but I guess I'm probably falling for the same trick that like BBC4 was trying to pull on the British public with the French show, because probably isn't. It's probably exactly the same. We had like Icelandic guests on recently, and they're just kind of like, they view those shows as kind of like hack, and the kind of thing is like the needless pain that's depicted in them as being kind of unrealistic. But yeah, and then Eastern Europe is also mad into their cop shows as well. Certainly they were mad into Commissar Rex. We should have ended on Commissar Rex. God damn.
Irresistible.
Oh God. But Alice, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Where can the lovely people find your work?
Well, you can listen to me talk about startups on Trash Future. You can listen to me talk about James Bond movies on Kill James Bond, or you can listen to me talk about engineering disasters on Well, There's Your Problem. And all of those have Patreons. So subscribe to those. Give me your money.
Do that. Give Alice your money.
Do you have any final comments on? We didn't talk about Pierce Brosnan on air, right?
We didn't talk about
because Kieran's been on a Pierce Brosnan kick.
I feel about Pierce Brosnan the same way I feel about
Pierce Brosnan thoughts.
Our regular segment on the podcast.
You brought it up too many times. I had to give you space.
I love when I think people don't notice what thing I've been on this week. It's an iCarly. Yeah, I don't know. He's kind of like one of those Irish celebrities where like they have one job that they were good at. I thought he was very good at Bond. The same way I think Jedward is very good at Eurovision. I'm sad that they don't do those things anymore.
Can I offer you a drop from Kill James Bond of Pierce Brosnan realizing something and going, huh?
Absolutely, if it will be picked up on your audio.
Huh? They really do use that sound effect.
Beautiful.
That's how I felt when I read the NSU story.
Yeah.
there was a like
the
a little
music.
There was a little piano trickling.
Yeah.
Piano.
Huh?
My Tatort?
Alice, you should definitely watch the Chinese co-production movie with Pierce Brosnan where he basically plays Jerry Adams.
Oh my God! Yes, that's The Foreigner, right? Yeah, that's on the list. Yeah,
excellent. Good. All right, and with that, you can catch our next episode on Friday. No, we record on Wednesday. God damn it. Anyway, ciao.
Peace.
Ciao.